Welcome to Guiding Bright Minds webinar series number 14, titled Executive Functioning and Autism, Back to School Tools. Lauren Rich is with us. She's a board certified behavior analyst and a speech language pathologist assistant at Therapy and Beyond. And in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to hand it over to her, and she's really going to guide you through all the tools that you're going to acquire today. But before I do so, I'm Kyle Feingold, and I am co-founder with my wife of Guiding Bright Minds. And I want to just tell you a little bit about why Guiding Bright Minds is valuable and why we encourage you to make it part of your community. So first, Guiding Bright Minds is working to become a single destination resource for parents or people guiding and raising neurodiverse learners. So we do things, or you can do things on our website, like finding screened providers like psychologists, therapists, coaches, tutors, to guide you and support you on your journey in raising neurodiverse learners. In addition, we connect you with all the nonprofits associated with neurodiverse thinking and learning. In addition, you're going to find articles and information on our website to help you identify maybe where your child's strengths are. Where their neurodiversity lies. You're going to get information specific to each neurodiversity and learning difference, signs and symptoms, as well as the strengths that go along with each. In addition, we host webinars like this every 2 weeks. So we encourage you to attend and spread the word. These are free for people in and outside of our community, and we're just trying to do the best we can to help guide parents and providers, particularly parents of neurodiverse kids. And in addition, we offer support groups, and some of our providers offer support groups for parents. And sometimes what we forget to do and what we need so badly is that self-care, like being able to take care of ourselves and nurture ourselves and guiding and supporting our incredible kids. So we hope you'll visit Guiding Bright Minds. It was created by myself and my wife, as I mentioned. I'm a neurodiverse learner myself. My parents did a wonderful job, at least some say, of navigating me being a neurodiverse learner growing up, and there was a lot less information out there. And my wife and I together, we've raising an incredible neurodiverse child of our own. So this is really a place and a organization developed by parents who have lived it and experienced it and want to make the journey basically easier for you. So not only am I a neurodiverse thinker and learner, I have dyslexia and ADHD, but for the last 17 years, I've coached and worked with parents and children with autism, ADHD, and really just outside of the box learning styles, including dyslexia. So when you really sit down and you get confused, or you're not sure where to go, or you just need some support from other parents, Guiding Bright Minds can be your place, your community to join and become a part of and really feel the support that we provide. Let me tell you, Guiding Bright Minds is no charge to parents. It is completely free and really a place, again, where you can go to find everything you need in guiding your child on their path. And again, one of the things that we do every 2 weeks is we host webinars just like this one. Our next one in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, is actually Jonathan Mooney. He's going to talk about his experience in his new book, Normal Sucks. So I hope you'll join us. Jonathan is really world-renowned in his thoughts and very outside of the box and an incredible person. So hopefully you'll join us for that. So before we get started, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go ahead and as we start with Lauren, and go ahead and put some information in the chat about Guiding Bright Minds, how you can become a free member at Guiding Bright Minds, and how you can just get on our newsletter and keep in touch with us and really learn about these webinars and additional resources that we can provide you. So with that being said, again, welcome to our Guiding Bright Minds webinar series. We're on number 14, Executive Functioning Autism, Back to School Tools. So Lauren Rich is our presenter today, and she's a board certified behavior analyst and a speech language pathologist assistant. Lauren's passion for the field started early on as she had the privilege to be around children with autism and other developmental disabilities. Through these experiences, Lauren's passion became helping children and families that dealt with behavioral problems and communication and social deficits. She earned a bachelor's degree of science she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Communication Sciences and Disorders at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center, where she studied speech and language pathology. Lauren went on to receive her Master's of Education in Special Education with an emphasis on autism interventions. So today, Lauren supervises treatments at 9 locations of Therapy and Beyond across Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado. Therapy and Beyond provides individualized behavior, speech therapy, and occupational therapy to individuals with autism spectrum, on the autism spectrum disorder and other developmental disabilities. So with that being said, I'm super happy to introduce you to Lauren and to hand it over to her so she can really help you, again, walk away hopefully with 1 or 2 amazing tools that can help guide your child to bring out their strengths and be the best they can be. So Lauren, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Well, hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited to kind of get this rolling, kind of help everybody with going back to school, because, man, there's some challenges that can occur, especially with executive functioning. So I'm going to go ahead and present, and we will get started. Okay, so going back to school, the guide to executive functioning. So let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay, so the first thing is I'm going to hand it over. We're going to do a poll question first.
All right. Launch that poll. I am having a glitch with launching the poll here. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do at this point is, Lauren, okay, sorry. What I'm going to ask everybody to do, I apologize, is to go ahead and please in the chat list whether you're a parent, a teacher, a caregiver, or a therapist attending. We just want to get a good idea of who's attending and how we can help. Thank you so much.
Perfect. I'm seeing them come in. This is great.
Great. Got parents, caregivers, lots of parents.
I saw some teachers. Yep, this is great.
Parent and therapist. Fantastic. And some caregivers as well.
Perfect. So all the above. I love it.
That's right.
Okay, we'll keep going. That gives me a really good idea. So then I'm going to give you lots of tips. But the first thing, let me see, it is not working for me. Hold on. There we go. So first, let's just kind of go over what we're going to talk about today. So first, we're going to just break down what executive functioning skills mean, because I think sometimes we have a broad idea, but we don't really know the why and the how of the nitty-gritty pieces of it. The next piece we're going to talk about is really understanding development, because we can't really help or facilitate the kiddos if it's your child, or if we're helping, if we're in a classroom, or if we're a therapist, we really need to understand the developmental progression. And then how do we make solutions? How do we create those solutions? And then the last one, but also the most important, is how do we put everything that we've learned together and actually do it with success? So, we have one more poll question now. Sorry, guys. I love the polls.
Yes, me too. And I'm still having challenges with the polls here, Lauren. So we're just going to do another one out loud, and hopefully by the next one, we'll get it rolling. So, all right. As a parent, have you experienced situations like, and you can just put 1, 2, or 3 down in order, your child can't sit through a 10-minute circle time without causing disruptions? That's number 1. Number 2, your child struggles to remember to bring home a math book for homework assignments. Or number 3, you've lost count of how many coats, lunch boxes, water bottles that have been lost over the years. Some 1, 2s, and 3s there. Lots of 1, 2s, and 3s. Fantastic. Thanks for chiming in, everybody. All right. So these are parents who know the struggles.
Yes, for sure.
That's right. All right. So it looks like
A good mix. Yes. There's a
really
lot
good
of
mix.
all, right? These are
Yes.
really good questions, normal things that happen every day.
That's right.
Okay. So let's break it down. So all of those kind of skill deficits that we kind of, or the issues that we run into, now we'll kind of figure out the why behind it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just what executive skills are. I think then that's the hardest thing is it is a brain-based skill. What does that mean? So I've kind of underlined a couple things that's really important to kind of think about is executive functioning skills. It's in your frontal lobe. So I would say it's like your forehead for any of the kids that we're talking to. I'm giving them the information of the why, it means that we should pay attention to what we're doing and the actions that we should take. So it's how to process that, how to organize our skills, how to make it all flow together, because the issues that we kind of did in the poll are common issues, but they can be so complicated, especially when in the morning, like myself this morning, it was raining. I had to deal with the dogs. I had to remember my keys, my lunchbox, my daughter in one hand, and the umbrella that I completely got soaked with, and tried to open the car at the same time, right? So it's all these things that are happening. But then the next thing is really understanding for each child is how to get things done when it needs to actually get done, and how to actually make everything work all at once is really, really difficult sometimes. So that's really the nuts and bolts of what executive functioning skills are. This one I thought is the most interesting, because it's great to know what they are, but there's so many skills that go into it. This is why executive functioning skills are so difficult. But as a therapist, as a parent, as a caregiver, sometimes you want to pull your hair out because you're in a situation and you're like, I just need them to get it. I just need them to remember their homework. You can't do it all. So breaking down these skills, the first one is organization. So how do you keep track of all the information? How do you keep track of your homework? How do you remember where your socks are in the morning? How do you remember where you put your toothpaste from the night before when you brushed your teeth? Okay, so all of those skills. Then you're looking at response inhibition. So I always think of this as kind of impulsivity, impulse control. Kiddos that I've worked with that have ADHD, this is something they feel like, they've got ants in their pants. They just react and they can't think about it. And so that can be really difficult. The next one is goal-directed persistence. So really wanting to complete a goal, finish the goal, but do they have any follow through? So especially if it's a goal that's a long-term goal that they want to meet, if it's even learning how to drive, if you're 16 and you want to learn how to drive, how can you actually hit that goal and really get those car keys in your hand? Then it's flexibility. So how can we be flexible if, things on a daily basis are constantly changing, our schedules are changing, that's life, right? Well, how do we develop our skills to be flexible with that? I know I'm still working that as an adult. We all have to work on being flexible. The next one is emotional control. So managing our emotions is one of the most difficult things. I think for every single person, we all have different triggers. If it's being in traffic, if it's your schedule changing and someone didn't tell you, if it's you waking up late, your alarm didn't go off. So really, all of those things can play, and knowing what our triggers are. The next one is working memory. So holding information. What information can you hold in your head, and how much can you retain to be able to actually do the instruction that's being asked? The next one is sustained attention. How long can we actually pay attention to something and not get bored? How do we cope with being bored is one of those things that are really difficult. The next one is task initiation. So beginning projects without procrastinating. I know, again, everybody's different. This is one of mine that is really difficult for me. So knowing what's difficult and being able to also counteract that is also very important. The next one is time management. So predicting how long it's going to take you to complete an activity, but also stay within the time limits that are provided as well. So if that's homework, if that's playing with your iPad when you get home, if it's how long does it take you to go to get ready for bed, all of those things kind of come into play. The last executive skill is metacognition. So metacognition is actually one of the most complex ones because this is really taking a bird's eye view and being able to actually evaluate and self-monitor your own performance. So how do you evaluate yourself and get better? So if you say, I didn't do great on this test, how am I actually going to buckle down and study? So this kind of also encompasses other skill sets too. But those are really it's a lot of skills though. A lot of skills that really, when you ask if you need to follow a routine, if you need to remember your homework, if you need to remember that mom told me I had a dentist appointment, I have to leave early for school. So all of those little things, all of these skills come into play.
Lauren, as you transition, I just want to let everybody know we're going to go ahead and send you a recording of this afterwards, and any additional materials that Lauren's going to share, we're going to go ahead and send that to you tomorrow morning. So look out for it, and please share it far and wide to others that can help.
Yes, of course. So, and we'll send this out so everybody kind of has those resources. So the next thing is the developmental progression. So really understanding what that looks like. So we're going to do the first poll question so I can get some information first.
All right. So I am going to go ahead and try and relaunch this and see if we get it here. Okay. So what I'd like to do is have you go down to question 3. You should see the poll. If you scroll down to question 3 and go ahead and answer that. So what struggles do your children face at middle school? Number 1, staying focused in class. Or excuse me, not middle school, at school. So what struggles do your children face at school? Number 1, staying focused in class. Number 2, homework. Number 3, following directions. Number 4, following the rules. That's tough for me. And then number 5, everything. All right, thanks for answering the poll. And again, we're just answering number 3 right now. All, yes, very common. All right. And thank you everybody for giving us your feedback. All, yes. Can't tell you how many students, Lauren, that I've worked with over the years who all these things are difficult, and all we want as parents, right, is to help our children become just a little bit more independent on some of these skills. So I'm anxious to hear kind of how you direct us on these questions.
Well, yes, and I will tell you that is what I face as well. Is it's not usually just one thing. It's usually there's bits and pieces of everything that make it difficult, which is why it's so hard sometimes, especially at school, and all of the executive functioning skills that come with it. So the next thing, so this kind of gives you, this is an overview. So this kind of gives you an idea of the skill sets that really should be mastered, for say, or really what kids are learning at this developmental stage. So just know that. And these are what the teachers are typically asking. So that's really important to think about, but why it's so difficult. So early childhood. So this is typically, I think about this from ages usually around 3 or 4. So it's before kindergarten, but it's really kind of that preschool setting. So what tasks are kiddos having to do? It's simple errands. So this could be at home if you're trying to get your shoes from your bedroom. So think about all of these skills as a parent, because we do have a lot of parents. This is not just for the classroom. This is also for at home and how you can make your lives a little bit easier, but why things are hard. So the next one is simple chores and self-help with reminders. So I would say my daughter's doing that right now. We're learning how to brush our teeth and stay on task and stay focused and remember where everything is. So those little chores that might be a little bit more difficult right now. And then it's cleaning up your bedroom or cleaning your playroom with assistance. So this, if they're in a preschool setting at this age, it's being able to do those simple tasks, but usually the teacher is there as a support system right now. Then you've got those inhibit behaviors. So this could be if you're making dinner and not to touch the stove if they're helping. So, at this age, all they want to do is help. They want to help. They want to be a part of what's going on, but it can be really hard if you don't have that kind of emotional control because you want to touch that hot stove. You're so interested in it. Running into the street if they don't walk with you, if they're too excited to go, to get into the classroom, or if we're going to the zoo, but they don't know how to walk, if they're not, if they're running. Grabbing a toy. So this is where those social relationships and sharing toys and response inhibition and really wanting to have things fast and not slow down a bit, which makes it a little bit more difficult. The next one is really looking, this is a little bit broad, so a little bit easier to kind of look at broad scope, but it gets a lot more complicated from kindergarten to second grade from what we just looked at. So that's what I want to really focus on, is how much more complex everything that we're asking of kiddos when they really become school aged. So the skills that really encompass are really looking at those errands or those directions. Instead of the very simple directions, they become multiple step, and they become multiple step with travel, which makes it much more difficult because you have to use your working memory. You have to remember all those skill sets. The inhibit behavior, so following the rules, right? Kyle said that one too. Following the rules, raising your hand. You want to speak up. You're so excited. You have the answer. Keeping your hands to yourself. Those are all those skills that even from kindergarten to second grade can be more difficult, become more complex. The next one is cleaning up your bedroom or playroom. So the organization piece. I think if all of us that are parents, that is the most difficult one, is when you've just cleaned the playroom, you've just cleaned bedroom, you've just cleaned the kitchen, you walk in and it's a complete disaster and you're like, I don't know what happened. You were in here for 10 minutes. What's going on? The next one is really deciding how to spend money. So if you have kiddos, especially going to first and second grade, that are doing chores for you, or even in the classroom, let's say as a parent, you're trying to get them to follow the rules and do what's expected. If they can earn something and they can gain something, can then they decide how they spend it and what they use it for. The next one is performing those simple chores. So they may need reminders to make their bed. They may need reminders to brush their teeth before they go to school. But again, it's those simple chores to start helping. The next is completing homework. So no, this is really important. Even into second grade, no more than 20 minutes. So that's, if it goes beyond that, then that's really beyond that grade level and that age. So we're really talking about kiddos between really 7, 8 years, 5 to really about 8 is your cutoff, but no more than 20 minutes on something that's really complex. Then you look at bringing home papers and forms and backpacks and lunch boxes and your water bottle and all those skills, trying to remember that. That's where it really starts to develop. Then we're going to look at 3rd to 5th grade, because this gets even more complex. So you've got kind of 4 categories that we look at, especially when going to school. So you've got the directions. So directions and running errands with travel. So cleaning up the bedroom, performing chores. But I also think is in 3rd through 5th grade, kids have more independence. So if the PE teacher or the typical ed teacher, or if they're changing classes already, you have to transition. You have to remember what class you're going to. You have to remember your backpack, but it is typically with a greater deal of travel. So it may be longer. It may be remembering to get something after the fact, after school's over. So again, all of those directions become really much more complex. Then homework. So completing homework, this is for up to 1 hour. Again, it's going to vary. I feel schools are starting to get away a little bit more from homework, but I think it depends on each district, each teacher you have. Again, it just depends. And then planning your school project. So that's big. Once you get into 3rd through 5th grade, there's a lot more projects. So you have to plan your time. It's time management. It's that when it's much longer, so you have months, and that's where the procrastination builds in pretty heavily for that. Then you've got organization. So again, that you're going to have more things to bring home. You're going to have more paperwork, more assignments. Again, taking the backpack, keeping track of all your belongings. Again, at this time, girls are going to have purses. Boys are going to have more, if they're playing sports, if you're playing in band. So you have a lot of things to carry and to think about. Then the last one is time and regulation. So again, keeping track of your schedule, saving and earning money. If we're behaving, so this is a big one. As teachers, if you're out sick, one of the biggest fears I hear from teachers is, oh, if I'm sick, the class is they go crazy. They don't listen, they forget everything. My substitute doesn't want to come back anymore. So I hear all of these stories, but that's a big thing that happens is typically the students will act differently if it's not their own teacher. So being able to actually regulate your emotions and being able to follow those unsaid rules are really important, but some kids don't necessarily have that yet. So it's all of that development that's progressing. So the next thing we're going to talk about, so that's just basic grade levels. And then now we're going to talk about how do we make solutions? How do we fix these issues that are happening? So with executive functioning, here I think of 10 principles really to improve our executive skills. So the first thing to help you either at home, in your classroom, if you're a therapist, you're working on executive skills, is how we teach. So when we teach rather than expect the child to acquire through osmosis. And the reason I say that is so many learners or parents or teachers will say, just have them watch their peers or have them watch me. But kiddos, and if it's dependent, it does not matter on age. Every child has to learn through experiences. So make them touch it, feel it, experience, and do it. And so the more they do that, the better they're going to be, depending on, again, the skill set that you're working on. So it could be homework, leaving little notes, but again, you want to teach the skill instead of them just watching it over and over and again, and then they just keep failing. The next thing to think about as either a parent, again, or a teacher or therapist is to think about the developmental level. So when you're looking at that, as I went through those developmental levels, but I want you to think about where your child or where your student is. So it doesn't always have to match how old they are, but you want to think of meet them at where they are so that they don't feel frustrated, because what you want to do is set them up for success, for independence. It may not be independent right now, but it's okay if you start small and then you gradually build. So it's okay to look at that. Don't feel like you're taking back a step. The next one is going to internal. So this means basically is we model for independence, but they're doing it. So they're starting out. You want to train skills from external to internal. So that basically means is think about everything that's going on in your environment. So let's say if it's a birthday party. So if you are going to a birthday party, but your child gets really overwhelmed with a ton of people, or maybe they're about to have a birthday party and they get really overwhelmed with a ton of people, you're not going to ask 50 kiddos. You're going to ask 10, or you're going to ask 6 of their most important friends that they have in the classroom, so that first it sets them up for success. They're not overstimulated. They're not overwhelmed. They get to have good social interaction and they get to have fun, but then the anxiety also decreases. The next thing would be setting them up for independence. Like let's say if it's at school and if it's at recess and maybe it's overwhelming, then give them those parameters of how about you play with this kiddo, or how about you play with 2, or give them idea and then praise and reinforce that, because they need that support, especially if it's overstimulating, it can be really difficult. Or let's say you just gave them a math is not their strong suit. It's really difficult. And they see the whole worksheet and everything that they're bad at, they're going to procrastinate, they're going to have anxiety, they're going to not know where to start. So it's all of these pieces. And then typically it's just kind of like a volcano and it erupts. And then you either get a kid that is crying, that's frustrated, that tears up their paper. All of these things may happen. Instead, if you took just a white piece of paper and covered up half the page, that decreased their anxiety. Again, but it's those small steps that can really, really help when you're in those situations. Part of it is making changes. So that's our next one. So when we manipulate the environment, just like I talked about, we make a change for the party, how many people, we make a change to homework, we make the kitchen a little bit quieter. So we change our environment a little bit to make every kiddo a little bit more successful so that they can feel they get that support and they feel that independence. The other one is control. So I think we all like control, right? We all like to be the driver. We all like to be in control of our lives and what we're doing. So kiddos are no different. They want to be just as independent, but let them be a part of the plan. So they have to be able to identify what makes them anxious, what makes things difficult, and then also be help with choices and practice in that structure. So the more they can be part of the plan, the more they're in control, and the more they're going to try and work much harder for that, especially if they get to control what they're earning as well. Effort is the next one. So for effort is really breaking down those tasks and making it less effortful. So the more effort there is, if we can go step by step so they can complete something, even if it's for homework, that's going to make it easier. So always think about how effortful something is. Again, the hardest part though is every kiddo is different. Just because one kiddo has difficulty and homework is really hard does not mean it's going to be the same for somebody else. So that's really important to look at, especially as when you're a teacher, you've got, this could be 22 kids in your classroom, and especially if you've got you've got kiddos that have, everybody has different abilities. And so think about that, and where everybody's at a different level. That also is why we appreciate the teachers so much for working so hard with that. The next one is incentive. So this is something never to forget. This is probably one of the most important, is because executive functioning skills are so difficult, especially in a classroom, because there are so many things happening in a classroom that make it really hard to pay attention and focus and follow the rules. We have to make sure that we are praising and we're providing rewards. The biggest mistakes, I think, as parents, as teachers, that we all make sometimes is we get stuck in the no or the negative. So don't do that. Do this instead. Don't do that. Stop doing that. Put your hands down. Stop. Don't raise your hand. Stop. I need you to be, really getting stuck in that. Instead, praise for what you see doing good. Catch them being good, because then what will happen is they get used to getting praised rather than just the negative of being stuck into that, don't do that. So the more praises you can give, the more rewarding what you're teaching is going to be. So that's the biggest piece. Just enough support. So this is, as parents, this is probably one of the hardest things to do, is we want to create independence, right? You don't want to support too much, because you have to find that balance. Even in your classroom as a teacher, we don't want to do it for them. We want them to be successful. So it's kind of that finding, literally you're on that tightrope, you're on that balance beam, you're finding the balance and going back and forth. Let them try and then be right there to pick them up if they need some help, and then go back to being independent. So you want to be just right there to help support. And then the next one is wait till mastery. So at this point, we really want to look at how can we support each kiddo that's in the classroom. If it's your kiddo at home, how do we wait and we teach for success, and we don't back up too fast? So what you want to do is think about, if they're struggling, think about, have we put everything in that we can right now? Okay, well, let's try. Maybe we change the incentive just a little bit, but let's keep trying until we've got it, till they've It's just like if kiddos want to ride a bike, there's a lot of executive functioning skills in riding a bike. You're going to fall down a lot before you ride. I know I did. At least I had a lot of scraped knees, okay? The next one and the last one is gradual progression. So this point is really, how do we fade our supports, fade our prompts, and incentives slowly, so not abruptly. So what you don't want to do is they learn how to ride the bike, and then you immediately are 5 feet away from them, and they turn around and then they fall because the supports are gone. Okay, so you want to go really slow. You want to make it so slow that they don't even realize that they're doing it by themselves, and by the time they can, they're like, oh my gosh, I did it. Okay, so think about all of those pieces and how you can gradually fade away. As teachers, it's hard because you have so many kiddos in your classroom. As parents, if you have one child versus 3 and 4, it totally changes your dynamic. So again, work with what you have when you have it. Use within your time constraints that you have. Use those prompts so that you can, if you're a teacher and you've got multiple kiddos that need support, or you've got a big classroom, how to use those prompts in place that let you be a little bit more independent, because you're setting them up for success. Okay, so now really the final piece is, now we're going to look at how do we put it all together, and what does that mean? So first, another poll question.
All right, so we're just going to go ahead and put this in the chat. So rate which skill is the most difficult. So number 1, routines. Number 2, temper or anxiety. Or number 3, interaction with siblings or friends. I can tell you for my son, all 3.
Okay.
And we'll wait for some people to enter into the chat here. Fantastic. So a lot of alls. Looks like one person rated them from the most to the least. They said temper and anxiety number 1, routines number 2, and interaction with peers was number 3. I like the way you did that.
I did too.
All right, and there's most everybody we're seeing, most common answer is all. But there's a few number ones, number twos, number threes, but definitely a lot of
Perfect.
a combination of the skills. For sure.
So all of these skills can be really difficult, and I think they can be difficult on their own, but then especially because we got so many all, this is what makes school, social interactions, sports sometimes so difficult, because all of these things can be triggers for, even if as an adult, these things can be difficult, especially if your routine gets changed and you don't know how to navigate that. Temper and anxiety, because again, as adults, as teenagers are big because they're going through puberty and there's a lot of emotions happening, but the same with adults is what are our triggers and what's going to happen. So with routines, so here's some tips if you're struggling with routines, is keep it short. Okay, so as complex as routines can be, you want to make it really simple, and think about with keeping it short and and the next one will be modifying steps. So how you can kind of loop these in together is, if it's, let's say it's brushing teeth or taking a shower. Taking a shower is a big one that I hear about a lot, especially at home, because you're like, oh my gosh, they've been in there for an hour, and I go in to check on them and they haven't even started. They're just sitting there singing in the shower, having a good old time. And you're like, we've got things to do. So typically what I suggest is keeping it short and modify steps. I will typically say is, if you don't care if the shampoo, conditioner, and body wash are they sell the one do it all, that's the easiest thing. That's going to save your life. If as a parent you don't care that much, modify those steps. And it doesn't have to be 3 separate steps. If they can do all in one and you're fine with it, then then do that. Keeping it short, timers. Timers are really great, and we'll do an easy one where then and if it's in a shower or if it's a button, I'll have them do it. They control it, but they know when they need to be done, and I'll give extra minutes in between if they want to sing, if they want to listen to something, if they want to do their own thing, or if they even just want to stand in the shower, whatever it is. But again, they get to help and control that. Adapt to the child's level. So again, we'll use the shower just as an example, but if it's in the shower and if they're having issues with bathing, if it's cleaning themselves, then I'll usually typically work with an occupational therapist, and we'll come up with if it's fine motor, if it's how they wash their hair, whatever it is, we'll come up with different adaptive things to make it a little bit easier. Let's say if it's homework. So if it's homework and you're working at home, or if you're doing a task in a worksheet or having to fill something out in the classroom. So modifying the steps, again, making it more simple. If name and date are already on their paper and all they have to do is fill out part of it, right? Making it simple, it's shorter steps. They chunk things up to make it, again, a little bit easier. Also looking at the pencil. So looking at pencils, is it long, is it short? If they're shorter, they're usually going to be easier if their hand tires out. So again, or if they like to type. Some schools are a little bit different depending on the technology in your classroom. If you can do it on an iPad, because that's going to help with being focused and decrease the effort with your hands, if that's okay, use that instead. So again, it depends on your classroom and your ability, but again, look at all those pieces. Fading the supervision. So this one is both for the teacher and for the parent at home. So fading your supervision as a teacher is looking at, instead of if you have to be over the child, if you have to look at what they're doing every time, then literally start walking around your classroom gradually. So check in, give praise, say good job, make sure they're monitoring what they're doing, walk around once, then walk around twice, then walk around 3 times. So you want to fade it over time, but again, giving the praise instead of just the negative of do it this way. As a parent, fading your supervision would be, instead of just having to be in the kitchen doing the homework, maybe they're on the couch. Now, again, everybody's different, so they may not be able to work on the couch because it's too distracting, but it depends on the environment. If you're always in the kitchen cooking dinner while they're doing their homework, how can you fade it a little bit so you're not checking in? Maybe if you're not walking over and checking on them every 5 minutes, you're doing it every 15. I have to set a timer for myself as well, so don't think it's just for the kids. Checklists are also very helpful. So I will make, for students in the classroom, I will make a checklist, an executive functioning checklist. I was actually doing this yesterday when I was in a school setting. We were trying to decide between a checklist on each individual student's desk or on like where the whiteboard is. So we were going to make a checklist of remember the date, don't forget your name. It was kind of like reminders, don't forget the date, don't forget your name, don't forget to check your work. Don't forget when checking your work means you've answered all the questions, and make sure you turn it in. So those are things like that that typically get missed in a classroom because they're in too big of a hurry, because it's impulsivity, they want to finish. And so really making sure that they're pacing themselves. Time management is a big one. It's not just about going slow, it's also about going too fast. And at home, I typically do like a chore checklist. So it has to be inspected though. This is what typically the biggest mistake is. Kids will just do it themselves, but then you go check and you're like, this was not done, but you already rewarded them because you just looked at the checklist. So I typically will say at first is you monitor and you give them what the expectation is. So you have to be very clear and black and white because so many kids are so literal. When you say go clean, that does not mean that they put everything under their bed, right? That means you put the dirty clothes in the laundry basket, you put the toys in a designated basket, but also be very specific of where you want things and be very clear, especially in the classroom too. A lot of teachers are wonderful. They put a lot of visual aids of where everything goes. Also, don't change it. I know we get bored, right? As a parent, I'm like, let's move it, let's change it around. Or in a classroom, you're sick of the same theme, you want to change it. For kids with executive functioning problems, this is going to be really difficult, okay? Again, more examples to think about when you're looking at routines and how to use these steps is getting ready in the morning. If it's a nightmare, think about how to modify them. Think about how it would make it easier. I've even had kiddos that are in, 5th and 6th grade. The morning is a nightmare. So you know what they did? This was their idea, okay, and it actually worked, and I couldn't believe it. But what they did is they got dressed because they wanted to sleep in and they didn't want to be rushed. They put their clothes on for school and slept in them, and then put their shoes on. It was easier for them, and it worked. And then we didn't have a fight in the morning. The parents were like, you know what? I didn't think it was going to work, but it totally did. Again, it just depends. Every kid's different, but that again, having them involved in that. Bedtime is another one. Create your structure and stay with the structure, because especially if you get kiddos that are wanting to stay up 10 more minutes, or there's a huge fight to if they have their iPad time or TV time or whatever it is, make sure you set a timer, you give reminders, and you have the structure. The same with the homework and putting belongings away. Again, we talked about those checklists and those visuals that will help. The next one, so this one was a big one too. So controlling temper and anxiety. The visual that I used, and so a lot of this information too, I've got it on the reference slide that you'll see, but the book, my favorite book, and this is for parents, teachers, all alike, they're amazing. They're called Smart But Scattered. If you haven't read it, it's a wonderful, wonderful book. They've got it for basic for school aged, but then I use it for adults, for myself, for anyone, if at any ages, it can be helpful. And this is where the visual came from, just so that you know, because they do offer those. But really, first let's talk about how do we control, not necessarily control, but how do we regulate? What do we do when we're angry? What do we do when we're anxious? So the first thing is every kiddo has to know what their triggers are. And even as an adult, we need to understand what our triggers are in an environment, what makes us anxious, what makes us upset. The next one would be, what can we not engage in? So it needs to be really clear. So for the example on here is we can't hit somebody. We can't break anything. Now every kid's going to be different because they're at also a different developmental age. So those are things that, if they're 2, if they're 3, you're still learning these things. When you're 12, you should be able to understand what the differences are. So again, kind of look at all those pieces. The next one would be, of course, make a can-do list. So replacement behaviors, especially from my view as a behavior analyst, is the utmost, most important thing that anybody can have, because I think of it from a sports mentality. If your coach keeps telling you what you can't do, or you're not doing it right, you learn what not to do, right? You learn, I'm doing it wrong. Okay, keep doing it. But if a coach shows you how to do it and you practice doing it right, then you're going to learn what you can do and how to replace that behavior. Okay. So, and I think about it's your form when you're playing basketball. You got to hold it a certain way. You've got to have a beautiful shot. We've got to practice that. So it's not about always, and sometimes some of the things that you want them to do don't work. So you also want a big list. You want to make sure, especially if you have a kiddo that has executive functioning problems, but is either diagnosed with OCD, this is going to be also very important, because you need a really, really big list, because when some things don't work to calm you down, it's gonna rev you up more, and you have to make sure your repertoire is really big to make sure that it doesn't actually increase your anxiety. You want to make it better. So with those triggers, understanding what those things can be, and then practicing it with the adult, and then putting them in that environment. So practice with either the teacher or with you as the parent. Practice it, talk about it, make a list, use this as an example. You can write it on just a scratch piece of paper, and then use it, and then praise it when they actually do it. Okay. Role play, practice, and reward. Make sure that they know that that's amazing when they're doing what you're asking them to do, instead of getting so frustrated. So again, this can change for everybody. So this could be if it's time management, if it's getting out of the door when they need to on time, if it's completing their homework assignment, or if it's literally at school completing, if it's a test and they completed it all, they filled everything out. I mean, that's a huge monumental task in itself, to remember to do all those things and complete it in a timely manner. So again, think about all those things. Now at school, the can-do list may be very different from at home. So those may things that as a parent and as a teacher, you want to collaborate on together. Make sure some of the things can be different, and that's completely okay, but you also may want some things that are the same. So that's when talk to each other during your parent-teacher conferences. If you have IEP meetings, anything like that, work together, because that's the only way that we're really going to be able to help facilitate that and make sure that it's being practiced in a timely manner. So everyday situations. So here's some ideas. These are things that just come up. I know these all happen to me with working with kids in my own family. But phone call interruptions. As a parent, this is really frustrating. Even as a teacher, if you're talking to another teacher, this can be very difficult. So if you're being interrupted, what can you do to help set yourself up for success and not be interrupted so much? So give that replacement behavior. So before your phone call, or even I honestly at home have a basket, and it's a 3-tier basket, and it literally says 1, 2, 3 on it. And I point. So, you always get those, if I'm working all the time, different hours, you never know what's going to happen. And sometimes you're going to get a phone call, especially during COVID. None of us know when we're going to be working from home with your kiddo. So that happens too. If you've got a sick day with your kid, but you're still working, you're going to be on the phone. So what you can do is have a basket, have the iPad, have, different things that they like to play with, whatever things they are, especially if you get interrupted a lot, because kids want to be monitored. They want to be with you. But if you don't have that luxury, give them what they can do. So if the phone rings, I point to number 1, and I'm monitoring, because that's what we do. We have to multitask as parents, right? And as teachers, then I call it like the busy basket. So if I see that, my kiddo, or as I'm teaching, if they need that unstructured time and they're getting bored, I will literally just point to the next basket, number 2. And then that typically gives me at least 30 minutes to be on the phone without being interrupted. And I go from 1, 2, 3, and then we start over again. If I'm on that call and it's going long, then that's typically what I do. Now, all of the baskets that I'm talking about, these are all preferred. So it's nothing that they're gonna not want to enjoy and love to do. The visuals, that's why I give the numbers. So it already has it 1, 2, 3. And then I give praise. So typically that's the other thing I have actually above that, is I have, especially because I'm one of those crazies. I decorate really soon and I'm ready for Halloween, but I always have a bowl of suckers, because that's our favorite in our house. That's the reinforcement, is if they're following instructions, they're doing what I need them to do, they know, and it's literally right above all the baskets that they cannot reach. I then hand it to them as I'm still on the phone ending my call. They get praise from me, reinforcement, a thumbs up, and they get, a little sucker. For teachers in the classroom, again, it's going to change. So you could have, I typically have like a busy basket there, but it could be fun activities if you need to do something. If it's when you're talking to somebody else, go ahead and have those. I typically will have visuals up on the wall of like, if you're interrupted, what are the expectations? These are the things that you can do. Write a note. I'll do like sticky notes on the desk. Write a note to me. Keep it in your head. That's how you can remember those little things like that. And then you put it on your desk. When I'm done talking, I will walk around, find those notes and answer and get you the support you needed. So just kind of teaching those things. Fights with siblings or friends. This is another one that can be really difficult. So try and not make threats. This is the hardest thing, I think, for all of us, is especially as a parent, because when you're in a hurry, you're going to be like, get your shoes on, or we're not going to see your friends, or we're not going to go to the movies, but then you're still going to go. Like, we're doing this. This is our plan, right? You're in the middle of the car. But try and make promises, not threats. Don't do bribes. So you want to practice. So as you're walking into, if it's friends, if it's siblings, as you're walking into a situation, typically I get more fights when you're at Target, when you're at the grocery store and everybody's going great and they're doing different things. I will say, okay, guys, here's the expectations when we walk in. Let's do the X, Y, and Z. And I will monitor it as we go. I'm pushing the cart. You guys are doing great. I love how you're talking. I love how you're sharing. That was our expectation. Now we can get, if it's typically I have, I like suckers. Again, that's what I use, but as a parent, but I put them in my purse and then they know that they can get them when we're done at Target, because the store is one of those places that is not as enjoyable as I once thought it was. The next one is have environmental supports. So this is a private space, a structure. Again, parent or babysitter will monitor. So environmental supports mean especially if you're if you're at a party, or if you've got a lot of friends over, like let's say it's a sleepover, you want to be able to talk to your kiddo and say, it is okay if you need a break. If you need a brain break, if whatever you need, it's okay. Even for just their sibling, if they're playing, sometimes you need a break because there's yelling, there's screaming, there's a lot that can happen, especially if you've got kiddos that are only children and they're used to more quiet environments versus a family that has multiple kiddos. It's a different world sometimes. And so they may be very overstimulated when that happens and they just need a moment. And it's okay for even them to tell, if they're over at maybe a friend's house, say, hey, I'll be right back. I need 5 minutes. I'll be right back. That's okay. But knowing that they can do that and they can ask for that is really important. Then teaching those communication skills kind of comes a part of that, is being able to communicate their needs and not be embarrassed by it. And it's okay. And also giving the parent, the teacher, the babysitter a heads up that they might need it, so they can kind of see the warning signs before they get really frustrated, because when they do, then that's a harder thing to maintain, especially those friend relationships. And then again, praise, reinforcement is the most important. The next one is getting dressed. So for getting dressed is making sure that you select the clothes in advance, you use a timer, you parent observation and prompts, we practice, add incentives, all those things that we've already kind of talked about, but really all of those little pieces will literally save your life when you're trying to get dressed and get out that door, especially when you only have like 30 minutes. If the kids like to sleep in and you've got 30 minutes to get to school, that's going to save your life a little bit. Well, that is everything, guys. And I just want to thank you all. And if you have any more questions, I know Kyle's going to kind of jump in, but I'm just really excited for Guiding Bright Minds, and so thankful that they asked me to speak. And I do want to remind everybody to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's really great. I've already done it and I'm really excited about it.
Appreciate it. Thanks. You can find us on YouTube and look up Guiding Bright Minds. You'll find our channel. Lauren's presentation will be there as well. I'm going to send it directly to all of you, but we just have about 5 minutes left, so I want to go ahead and open it up to questions. If you have a question, please drop your question into the Q&A, and we'll get as many addressed as we can. And I wanted just to add one thing, Lauren, that you said, is that so many parents, and we all want mastery and our kids to master skills. And you mentioned kind of, slowing down and not expecting mastery right away. One of the things that we know, it takes adults 66 repetitions in consistent days to build a new skill. For kids that are neurodiverse or have a learning difference, it can take up to 254 repetitions. So there's going to be a lot of mountains to climb going up and down in order to get to that place of mastery. So parents, we know that it's difficult to support your kids through all those ups and downs times, but you can do it. You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. All right, so Q&A. Here's our first question. What do you do with a child who refuses to engage in checklists and lists? My child can't complete more than 2 steps and very clear instruction. She is 12 and in grade 8 this year.
So the first suggestion I would give is if she has not been a part of the solution first. So typically, if we try to make their own checklist, we want to walk through it with them and talk about the why. So well, tell me why it's not working. And sometimes you'll get the frustration of, because I can't do it. Well, if you can get through that and say, I'm here to help and support you because I know it's hard. I know. And if you can feel their frustration and be very empathetic and then talk through it. So sometimes the checklists don't work. So you want to do, if it's just one or 2 steps that they can do, then instead of doing a checklist, pare it down. Do one thing and then maybe, I've done a flip book before and then I'll flip the book so then I can see the next one. So it's small, it's incremental, and then I'll do 2 and then I'll flip it and they'll do 2. And then once they've done that, then we'll do 3. And so then it's very small progression, but then they feel independent and confident. And then you can start adding on. Again, it's that mastery. It depends on every kiddo is different on how long it's going to take to build that mastery up.
Awesome, thank you. And here's another question. I have teenagers that still struggle with executive functioning in school. Biggest struggles are homework and organization. Any resources I can check out to assist them?
So again, I would recommend, there's a Smart But Scattered for teenagers. So, and it's a quick read. I mean, it's a book, but it's on Amazon. It's a quick read. It always gives a lot of helpful, but there's also extra materials in there that will really help. For organization and homework, I typically will say, I always think of the old school like binder but the calendars, the binders, those are super important. It's really hard because our lives have become very digital and virtual, right? But for kiddos with executive functioning, the digital can actually be more of a distraction and more difficult to navigate, even though they're really good at it. That part necessarily can because you can get off task really easily. I will do all paper. So I'll typically have an organizer where they can organize it and there's different colors. And I do everything I'll do subject by color. So then that helps them remember, but everything's very streamlined, very organized, and that's their way of double checking it as well. But again, with the teenagers, have them, it depends on what it is. So if it's organization of their room, start small. So start with one area that they need to help organize or remember, and then gradually increase it over time.
Yeah, and I'll just mention too, Lauren, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Understood.org is a great resource for parents and teachers, but particularly parents, where you can find lots of different types of tools. If you type in executive functioning tools, you'll get a whole list of different things to explore. So it's very parent-friendly, written in terms that everybody can understand. So that's a great resource as well. And then, of course, if you look on the Guiding Bright Minds website, if you're looking for some direct support, you'll find organizations, coaching organizations, that specialize in helping kids develop executive functioning skills around their academics. So take a look. You guys, it is 1 o'clock. So Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What a wonderful presentation. So many takeaways and pertinent ones for that. And then last thing, please visit guidingbrightminds.com for our YouTube channel. Check out our community, become part of the community. There's no cost to join. So hopefully we will see you in our community, or at least back at one of our next webinars every 2 weeks, same time, same channel. If you registered for this, you'll get notifications of others. Thank you so much. And again, Lauren, thanks so much. We hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.